We kill more people by 9 a.m. than your city kills all day. It's Late Night with David Letterman. Tonight, Steve Gutenberg, comedian Carol Lieford, author Martin Amis, and stupid human tricks. Plus, Paul Schaefer and the world's most dangerous band. And now, a man who wants to reassure you, don't be scared. It's just a TV show. David Letterman!
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you. Please, please, settle down. Steve Gutenberg here. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, for another installment of the Stupid Human Tricks. Very nice young men and women from all over the United States who come here to show us silly little things that they do. Usually they've learned them in bars and they win drinks by doing them for... I'm running out of things to say. Anyway, let's begin now. It's a whole separate trick getting ready here. Who's next? Well, if I had my cards, I could tell you. Right over here. Craig Hollabaugh. Is there a Craig Hollabaugh back there? Hi. Hollabaugh. Where are you from, Craig?
I'm from New Mexico, but I live in Georgia now.
Oh, New Mexico's a beautiful state. It's the land of enchantment.
It is.
Yeah. And where do you live in Georgia?
I live in Atlanta.
Yeah. Oh, Atlanta's a great town.
Yeah.
Do you like it down there? What do you do?
I'm a graduate student.
Okay. All right, I'm going to throw you some eggs. Get ready. Here we go. What are you going to do for us tonight?
Well, I do a combination of three things. First, I balance on the hind legs of this chair, and I spin this pillow on the index finger of my right hand, and I'll try to whistle the theme song to My Three Sons. Something.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's like the horizon. That stabilizes you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Here we go. I'll be over here with my eggs. They're farm fresh, by the way.
Okay.
Here we go. Gonna balance. Twirl the pillow. Here we go. Oh, very close. Nice job, Craig. Thank you for coming up. Nice to see you. Yes, sir. Yes, the youth of America is... Yes, sir. Oh, man alive. What is he, like a psychopath or something?
Well, there you have it. Yes, I did a stupid human trick on Letterman, and you got to see it there. And we're going to talk about that this evening. And it kind of is a precursor to the presentation I gave last time, where I was talking about my PhD dissertation, because that trick was done in 1990, in June of 1990, and I gave my dissertation defense about 3 years later. But this story starts way back in the 70s. I grew up in a small town, and let me get that going over here. I grew up in a small town, and there was one building in town that had an elevator, and it was this one right here, this the Los Alamos County building, and it was a 2-story high building. So from a building perspective, it was really, going in that elevator was anticlimactic, and I've always been fascinated with buildings and large buildings, and I've always wanted to go to New York City to see the big buildings. Okay, so we're going to zoom forward to 10th grade in Mr. Carlson's geography class. I sat with my friend Andy, and we used to sit in the back row, and we learned to balance on chairs in the back row and leaning up against the wall. And our challenge was to see how long we could actually stay balanced in the chair throughout his class. And now he didn't really care because we're way in the back and we didn't make any noise. And I don't think we ever fell out of the chair and caused a commotion. But it did kind of, we did get the skill to balance in chairs. And some chairs are a lot easier than others. And we don't need to go into that, but it's got to deal with the center mass. So in 1982, was it Tom Snyder had a show called Tomorrow? Was it Tomorrow? Whatever. Tom Snyder had a show after Johnny Carson and after the local news, and he retired in 1982. And about 6 days later, they started a new show called Late Night with David Letterman. And before that, Letterman was a weatherman on NBC there in New York City. That was in 1982, and I was in college at the time, and that's right at the right time slot for when you're studying all evening, you want to take a break, and you go and you see what's on Letterman, because what Letterman was doing back then was a lot of crazy college type stuff. Like I remember one kind of thing he ended up doing was he dressed up in a Rice Krispie outfit, which had like nets tied onto the outside of them, and they were all full of Rice Krispies, and he got into a giant bowl of milk, and he basically laid there, and it was that kind of shenanigans that kind of he gained popularity amongst the college crowd. And I was living in a house we affectionately called the Leisure Club, and one thing my roommate and I, Bob, would do was we would spin the pillows on our fingers sitting there watching TV. And both of us would go, and then we got to the point where we could throw the pillows back and forth to each other, and we got pretty good at that. In fact, we did it so much that we wore holes through the center of some of the pillows. But I got the notion of how to do that. Again, same with the chairs. Some pillows are easier to do than the other ones. And those ones were particularly easy to learn how to do. And then right around 1986, there was I think it was it wasn't a Nova. It might have been. No, it wasn't a Nova. There was a mini-series on PBS called Skyscraper, where it was, I'll show you what here's what it looks like. This is over at Amazon. You can actually watch this now, but I think it's a 4-part series. It's a 4-part series covering the building of a skyscraper from the very beginning. The very beginning is like going to council meetings, getting the permits, buying the land, figuring out where it is. And this is actually in Manhattan, in the Hell's Kitchen. Is where this building actually resides. So they built this building. This is 1986. And I was always kind of fascinated with skyscrapers, like I said. So I watched this thing it was very interesting to me to see all the processes involved in how skyscrapers are actually built. And so it was kind of feeding my fascination. Meanwhile, Letterman was gaining more and more popularity with the college kids, and he came out with a segment called "Stupid Human Tricks." And I think one of the very first ones, maybe I'm not too clear about this, but the one stupid human trick that is like ingrained in all college kids' minds in the 80s was the guy that stopped a spinning metal fan blade with his tongue. I'll show you the picture of it here. So this guy comes out. He's got the safety grill removed. He turns it on. He sticks his tongue in the fan and actually stops the fan blade from moving. The audience went absolutely nuts. It was the craziest thing that pretty much anyone had seen at the time. And it kind of really cemented Letterman in the minds of colleges, because he's been on now 5 years and he's just gaining more and more popularity. So now, all right, now back over on campus, like the student events or the dean of student life or whatever would run a bunch of events on campus to kind of get the students out of their dorms and doing things that are not studying, kind of just things like. If they were interesting, I would participate in them. Like I participated in the pie eating contest. We got a team together for the scavenger hunt. We actually won the scavenger hunt. There was about 8 of us working on the scavenger hunt, and we were the only team that actually brought in an 18-wheel semi truck. That was the classic. That set us way over the top. And there was this competition called the Ultimate Nerd Contest. So I'll show you a picture of that over here. So here I am in the Ultimate Nerd Contest there at NMSU, and I think this is probably around 1986 or 85 or 86. That's me in the center. I'm kind of tall. And here's the good thing. I didn't have to look very far to find a calculator for my belt or a pocket protector. Just put it in. And I was carrying like an organic chemistry textbook full of loose paper, and big shoes and white shirt, and my glasses were taped and that kind of thing. And when I got on the stage, I was getting introduced, I tripped, intentionally of course, and flung those papers all over the stage. And then I scurried to pick them up like the ultimate nerds do. All right, so that's so I got used to that. I think that was probably one of the more it was a competition, and I was on stage doing something pretty stupid. All right, so then there was after that. This is probably in 1987. Like I said, that guy stopped a fan blade, and on February 1987, that guy came out and stopped the fan blade, and. I think it's probably in the fall of 87 or maybe the spring of 88. The campus events had a stupid human trick competition there on campus. And I knew that I could do the chair, and then I knew that I could spin the pillow. But that wasn't quite enough. There had to be something else. The combination of 3 things is what makes it kind of unique. And so, I'll whistle the Andy Griffith theme song. And then I was like, no, that's too familiar. No, this is in the 80s now. It's probably 1987. It's probably too familiar. Let's whistle something else. Because if I screw up, I can't have it be something that's people, they kind of know, but they don't. If I mess up, they won't really pick up on it. So I didn't whistle the Andy Griffiths theme song. I whistled my Three Sons theme song. And I got up there on stage. There was 3 of us there, 3 students. The first girl came out, and she was, I don't think she ever actually watched Letterman, because her act was just stupid. The notion of the stupid human trick is the fact, like Letterman said there, it's people doing these tricks in bars for drinks and that kind of thing. Hers was just dumb. And I got up and I did mine, my 3 things, the chair, the pillow, and the whistling. I got done. And then the last guy came up and did the fan trick with basically copying what he saw on Letterman. And he brought in a fan club in the audience. And so when it was time to vote, they did it on audience participation, and he won. Well, that's fine. I mean, I don't mind. But afterwards, he came back, when we were walking off stage, he said, "Your trick was really good. You should have won." And I looked at him and I kind of smiled and I said, "You will be copying Letterman where I will be on Letterman." Little did I know that would actually happen a little bit later. Okay, so I graduate from New Mexico State, go to Georgia Tech, and I had this trick in mind, and I wanted to go to New York, so I figured I'll get on the show, and I'll get paid to be on the show, and fly up there and probably a hotel, and then I can get to see the buildings. So, like I said in my last time, my PhD defense, you do a year's worth of coursework, and then you pass that test called the preliminary exam, and then you start doing your research, and you don't really have class, and you don't have tests. So I knew that if I approached the Letterman show, that they were going to call and basically say, "Can you come tomorrow?" Because something they don't, just the way they do their scheduling. "Can you come tomorrow?" And I didn't want to say no, because if I had a test the next day, I didn't want to say no. So I waited until I got out of my courses and I had free time to basically say yes to that question. So after that first year, I took some photos. Actually, a friend of mine, Jim, took these photos. I wrote him a letter and I mailed it to, I don't know, where, NBC Studios in Rockefeller Center in New York City. And so here's a picture of that. Here's a picture that I sent them right here. This is I just found a chair and I balanced it and I spun the pillow and I kind of explained what my trick was, and I mailed this letter off. All right, so about a month after that, I get a call in the lab. And actually somebody takes a message in the lab. This at school. This is in where my office is. I was in the lab. One of the office mates takes a message. And so I walk in, and he says, "Hey, Craig, you got a message. For some reason, somebody from the Letterman show called you." And I was like, "Really?" So I called him back, and I think her name was Susan. She was the the stupid pet talent coordinator. And she says, "Okay, your letter looks good, but we need a videotape of you doing the trick 3 times without turning the camera off all the way through. We need that 3 times. Don't turn the camera off. Send that to us next." So I found a video camera. I remember that one back then was, it's like a 2-unit. You had the giant thing that you shoulder strapped on. That's the tape recorder part, and then you had the the camera portion, which was probably like this big, and you had to lug this whole thing around. Jim came down and we recorded me doing the trick in the empty bedroom at my house there 3 times without turning the camera off. We labeled it up. I mailed it off to New York City. And I waited. I didn't wait very long. It actually was almost like a week later. And I get a second call, and it's on a Wednesday. This is Wednesday, June the 6th, 1990. And she says, yeah, this is Susan up in that late night, and we want to find out if you can come up tomorrow. We had a cancellation. I can't remember who canceled. I think it was like Bruce Willis or Ted Danson. We had a cancellation. We'd like you to come up. Can you do it? And I said, yes. She goes, okay. Get a ticket, fly on LaGuardia. We'll put you up in a hotel. And you got to be here at studio at 2 p.m. on Thursday. We will offer you a limousine ride from the airport to the hotel, and from the hotel over to the studio. And we'll give you limo rides back to Atlanta, and we'll pay for all that. And I said, yeah, I can do that. So now my adventure begins. All right, so I called everyone I knew. And I told them, I said, you should be watching Letterman tomorrow night. I didn't give them any details. I left mostly messages because this call was during the day. Got my flight, and 6 a.m. flight out of Atlanta. And I didn't get any sleep the night before. Naturally, I mean, who's going to go to sleep the night you're going to be on Letterman? I mean, this is the biggest show for college-age kids in the country. And I can't go to sleep. What if I oversleep? I can't have that. So they didn't get any sleep the night before. I packed up my clothes, the pillow, and the chair. I took the chair with me because I didn't want to have to rummage around and find a chair, and my camera. And I'm off to go to New York. So my friend Jim, again, the guy's a saint for this. He drives down to Atlanta he drives in, probably a 30-minute drive for him. Comes into town, picks me up around 5 o'clock in the morning. And we had the chair and a giant box. And I was going to check that. And I was like, oh, God, I hope this goes through. And we get down to the airport. I put it on there, and I'm probably flying Delta. And they check it in. I get my flights, and Jim says, okay, good luck. So I fly up to New York. It's nonstop from Atlanta. I get there about 10. And there's a guy there, a limo driver, dressed in black, probably had a hat on, got my name on the placard, all about. And I said, that's me. He goes, okay, let's go. Do you got anything? Did you check anything? And I said, yeah. We go over to baggage claim, and the chair in the box comes out of baggage claim, and gets the giant box. He picks it up and he goes, okay, let's go. He goes out to the parking lot. He says, what's in this thing? Because there's nothing in there but a chair. And I said, it's just a chair. And he goes, really? And I go, yeah, it's just a chair. He rips the box open, takes the chair out. Then he rips my baggage claim ticket off the box. He kind of looks around. We're in the underground parking lot. He kind of looks around, throws the box in the parking lot somewhere, and just says, okay, get in. And we get in. He gives me a ride over to the Drake Hotel. And the Drake Hotel was a hotel there in Manhattan. And it was on 440 Park Avenue. And I get to the hotel about 11 a.m. So now I got 3 hours to get to Rockefeller Center. And it's not very far. I'll show you a map here. So the Drake Hotel is over here. This is Manhattan. This is right in the middle of the town. Or actually, it's probably a little south of Empire State Building. So this is the Drake Hotel. And I think I remember walking up. This is Fifth Avenue here. So I walked up this way, Fifth Avenue, and I hadn't had anything to eat. I hadn't had anything to eat. And I was like, there's hot dog vendors along the way, and I was like, nah, I don't want to take a chance on that. So all I ate was M&Ms. All right, so get this. So I hadn't had any night. It ain't sleep the night before, and all I had to eat was M&Ms for the whole day, right? And so I'm pumped up on adrenaline and sugar. But so I'm walking across Manhattan with my backpack and my chair. I'm just carrying it. And I didn't get any double takes or anything. I guess it's this normal sight to see people walking with chairs or walking with anything in New York. So I just walk along, and I remember seeing, I know I walked up this Fifth Avenue because this right here is St. Patrick's Cathedral. And I remember stopping, sitting down in my chair, getting out my backpack, taking out my camera, and taking some pictures of the cathedral there. And then I hooked it around here and walked by the ice skating rink at Rockefeller Center. And then I think you have to walk down this side here, and you go into the NBC Studios' entryway doors right over here. So, and I arrive at 1:30, get there plenty of time, and 2 o'clock is check-in. So 2 o'clock comes around, and I walk up to the receptionist there and I say, yeah, I'm checking in for late night. And she looks and my name's on there, and she says, okay, go up. I think it's on the 5th floor at the time. So I go up to the 5th floor. Maybe it's the 8th. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So I go up to there, and I find Susan there, the Stupid Human Tricks coordinator. And she introduces herself, and she says, okay, here's the deal. Dave is going to ask you 2 or 3 questions, and because of that, we're going to pay you extra plus pay. Extra plus pay is, I guess, if they ask you the 3rd question, they have to pay you a little bit more. And I said, okay, I wasn't looking to get paid. I just was there to see the buildings, go on Letterman. Really, I was just there to see the buildings. Letterman was the avenue to get there. And so anyway, we're going to pay you $525. I was like, oh, great, okay. I had to join the union for a day. So you fill out your own union paperwork, you get your union card, you throw it in your backpack, and then anyway, so it's all good. And then they do all the check-in, and you have to wait. Everyone else shows up. And now at 4 o'clock, you're going to have rehearsals. Now, all the clocks in the studio are set to show what the recording time is. So, like, they record the show at 6 o'clock p.m. But the clock on the wall in the studio says it's 11:30, which is the time the show is actually on when it's going to get replayed on the air. So all the clocks in the studio are set to showtime, even though it's 6 o'clock. So the rehearsal was at 4, and during the hours before the show, actually, she comes in right before the rehearsal, and there's 4 of us. There's 4 people doing their trick that day. There was a guy that, well, I'll just tell you what they do, and here in a minute. But she says, okay, there's 4 of you here. We're gonna go through rehearsal, and we're gonna pick 3, and the 4th person will be automatically eligible to come back when we do stupid human tricks again. So I was like, oh wow, that's kind of a bummer. But hey, I'm here. I'm really here to see the building, so if I don't get picked, that's fine. And she says, somebody asked, well, are we going to meet Dave before the show? And she says, no. In fact, you're only going to talk to him on the show. Dave doesn't want to meet anybody because he wants his reactions to be unrehearsed. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And he's going to ask you 2 questions. And you got to have an answer for these, and you have to keep it short. He's going to ask you, where are you from and what do you do? So I want you to write down what the answers to those questions are and memorize them. and don't take long on the show. Just tell them really quickly where you're from and tell them what you do, and that's it. All right, because you got to make the show roll on. He says, one last thing. One last thing I'm going to urge you. Do not upstage Dave. Don't go out there and try to show him up. He has been doing this for decades. And if you do that, he will humiliate you to the point where you will regret it for the rest of your life. Do not upstage Dave. And we're like, oh, okay. All right, so rehearsal comes around. All four of us go out. And the four were a guy that catches whole eggs, raw eggs in his mouth. And, you know, you saw him there. I kind of sped through that. Dave would throw him whole eggs, and he would catch them in his mouth. And he intentionally breaks the first one to show you that it's actually raw. So he'll pull it out of his mouth, and he'll break it and throw it on the ground. But he catches whole eggs. There was me. You saw my trick there. It was the pillow, the chair, and the whistling. Fourth guy eats whole hot dogs. And the fifth guy, I kind of was debating whether or not to tell you. Oh, wait. Okay, I got some messages in the chat. The last guy, I was debating whether or not I should tell you or not. And then my friend said, "Oh, I want to hear that story again. You have to make this one immortalized." And I was like, "Ugh." All right. I will give you the thumbs. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're kind of disgusted with things, hit the mute right here. And then I'll give you the thumbs up when I'm done telling you what his last trick was. Okay, so go ahead, hit your mute. All right, everyone muted? All right, so the last guy, he had cans. He had like a 6-pack of Orange Crush. And Orange Crush just was really sugary. And he'd drink about half a can and swash it around in his mouth. And he'd drink that and then kind of swallow it. And then what he would do is tip his head over a bowl of popcorn. And then he would let spit come out of his mouth. And it was really sticky from the Orange Crush. And he could hook it on popcorn and then suck the popcorn back in his mouth. And okay, yeah, you can unmute now. All right. So that's what the last guy did. Now, they come back. They said, okay. And he wasn't really too reliable. He was having problems making it work. Let's just say that. Okay. So my audition went okay. It was kind of shaky. My whistling was not quite fluid, but I made it through. And so they make a decision, and it's us three. It's the egg guy, it's me in the chair, and the hot dog guy. So the fourth guy, he was invited to come back. Okay, so here's one thing that you may or may not know. If you watch Letterman and you were a big fan, particularly when he was on NBC, he would always comment about the studio being kind of hot. He'd come out and he'd be, "Wow, Paul, it's kind of hot in here tonight." And Paul's like, "It sure is." Well, actually, the studio is really cold. It's the thermostat, the tip in the studio, which is where Dave, the band, and the audience sit, is right around 57, 58 degrees. And Dave does that specifically because they're going to record at 6 p.m. and people will typically have eaten beforehand, and he doesn't want the audience to fall asleep during the show. So he intentionally makes it cold, and it makes them a little bit uncomfortable, makes them a little bit edgy, so a little bit more excited than they normally would be. So it's really cold in the studio. It's kind of freezing, actually. All right, so they pick us three guys. I have a shaky audition, and I mentioned something to the stagehands. They had 6 to 8 people doing set construction there behind the scenes at the Late Show, and I mentioned to one of those guys that I need to see something during my audition. Just remember when I was doing the trick, they bring out that artificial horizon. Now, when I learned to do this, when I learned to balance in the chair in high school, what I would concentrate on is I would stare at the desk in front of me, and that would set up my reference for the balancing. And if that thing I'm staring at is not close enough, I don't really get a good sense of where the balance is, because it's not actually I use balance like you would traditionally use balance, but I use a sight positioning is how I kind of learned how to do it. So I needed something to see, and when I'm sitting in the chair, even though the studio is really quite small, Dave's desk is off to my feet, and his desk was too far away, and all the angles were wrong. So they built stagehands built me this little artificial horizon. You saw it there. It was a little extravagant. They could have just put something out there, but they built it. And we're on. All right, 5 p.m. comes around. The guests start rolling into the green room. Now, we're already there. We've been there since 2, so we're hanging out in the green room. And the green room is really, if you watch a show on NBC, the green room is right off of the main stage. Like if you leave the studio and walk in front of Dave's desk and walk out the doors, you turn left and you're right at the green room. So the green room shares a wall with the stage, and the guests show up, and the guests that night were Steve Gutenberg, us 4 now, but there's only going to be 3 on the show, but the 4th one was able to stay for the recording. Carol Leifer, who's a comedian and author named Martin Amis. All right. Now, we didn't meet Steve Gutenberg. The green room was kind of full at the time, and I don't think that he didn't want to sit in the green room with the hot dog guy. This is my guess. All right, I don't know. Maybe the green room was so full that maybe the main guest is always kept in a private waiting room, but we never met him. We never actually saw him. We only saw him on the monitor in the green room. We did get to meet the band. The band rolls in, and the band at that point was Paul Schaefer, Anton Fig, Will Lee, and Sid McGinnis. And they all come in and they get drinks. In the green room, there's drinks and a fruit plate and some cookies and some other snacks, bottled water and that kind of thing. So they all come in, grab their drink, and they go out and they start tuning up or getting ready to go. But Will stayed behind and he talked to us for a little while. And it's really good that people would talk to us because, we are friggin' nervous. We're going on an hour. And so Will's like, okay, it's all going to be great. Just come in and do your thing. It's all good. We go through this a lot. Every night we do it. It's all fine. Everyone here knows what they're doing. We didn't get to meet Larry Bud Millman or Chris Elliott. They weren't on the show that evening, so it's all good. All right, so we're sitting there waiting, and 6 p.m. comes around. At 6 p.m., the clocks in the studio say 11:30, and the band starts playing. Bam! And the band is friggin' loud. We're not even in the same room as the band. We're in a different room, and it's loud in our room, and we could see up on the monitor, we could see what the main feed is going out, that's going to be recorded, that's going to go live at 11:30. We could see the whole thing. We could see the audience, hear the band through the walls. And so 6:30 comes around, which is noon, which is at midnight Eastern time. And says, okay, you guys are up. We walk around the back of the stage, and the A guy goes out and he does his thing. And we can only hear at that point what's happening. And Biff Henderson, he was a stage manager for a long time, like a really long time. And he had his little headpiece on. He's coordinating the back of the stage. Egg guy comes off, and And Biff looks at me and he says, okay, you got this. Go do your thing. And he smiles at me. Dave calls my name, and I walk out. And the audience is they're going off. And the audience is loud. They're really loud. The studio is actually really small. That studio is nothing like when he moved over to CBS, that theater over there the Late Show Theater was huge. This one is really small. I think there's only about 200 people in the audience. And the room itself is very tiny. It looks big, but it's not really. So you go over and I shake hands with Dave. Now Dave's a tall guy. I mean, he's probably about my height. And I shake his hand, and he has really rough hands. I mean, that guy does not. He does some yard work or something. I don't know what he does on his free time, but his hands are pretty rough. So I explained my trick, and I had an opportunity to kind of work with the audience. You know, you hear from performers, you know, you got to know the audience, you got to kind of listen to them. And I'm explaining my trick, and they all start kind of laughing a little bit, and I kind of waited for them to calm down a little bit. Then I threw in the last part, and then they really got excited. So I get started. Everything's fine. I'm doing my thing. And I start whistling. Now, whoever was watching rehearsal, and I know that I talked to Susan later, and she said, Dave was watching rehearsal. And she said, actually, Dave makes all the decisions on the show. He may not be in the studio at the time, but he's watching. He makes all the decisions, what's going to happen, when, what gets cut, what gets added in. He makes every decision on the show. So he was watching, and he said, this guy that's whistling, he needs a little help. And he worked out with Paul that Paul needed to come in halfway through and accompany me in my whistling, which was great, because at that point I'm halfway through, and Paul joins in, and that's great because it kind of covers my second half of the whistling. And I get done, and I'm like, I make it. It's like on the fly. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna throw the pillow in the air. So I did a little flare at the end. I didn't do that. I never did that before. I threw it in the air, and if you were watching the video, it went up. Probably went up about 4 feet and came back down. So what is that, like 2 seconds at the most? That time that it was in the air to me was like 30 seconds. And you look up and you see the rafters up above the stage, and you're like, oh shit, I hope it doesn't go up in the rafters. I had no idea how far it went. And then it came back down. I grabbed it, threw the pillow down, and I was done. And I had done it. That feeling right then was, you cannot explain that feeling that I had when it was done. All right, so I go off, and the hot dog guy comes out, and the show continues. And I come back in, everyone's patting me on the back and congratulating me, and because they're watching it on the monitor in the green room. And I was like, you're in like this euphoria state. I did this thing. All right, so after the show's done, the stage guys come in and ask me, hey, what do you want to do with this chair? You want to take it back with you? You want us to ship it to you? And I said, no, I'm not going to take it back. And I said, no, why don't you ship it to me? And in fact, why don't you put my address label right on the seat. Don't box it up or anything. Just stick it right on the seat. So here's the pillow. I went and found the pillow. Yes, I still have the pillow. I have all sorts of crap. All right. And here is the chair. And at the time, let me get this in the camera. At the time, I told him, just put the address label right here. Now you can see there's a little bit of the tape mark left. And this chair, that chair was in the lecture hall there at Georgia Tech. It was in the lecture hall, and I looked all over the place when they called me, and I looked for all the different kind of chairs that I had access to. And that chair is not ideal, but it was doable. It turns out that chairs that, if you're going to try this at home, see how the chair, let's put this on my desk here. Get this like this. You see, you're going to get it like that. Okay, the angle of the back leg. See how it's kind of coming back like this? The steeper this is, the harder it is to balance. If the back comes down and is almost straight down to the floor, those chairs are really easy just because of the center of balance makes them really easy. So you want a chair that the legs come more straight down than they come in an angle. So I said, put the thing on the chair, put the label on the chair, and see if it comes back. So I get in the limo ride, and all of us guys go back. In fact, all the people that are on the show stay at the same hotel. They treated everyone the same. A guest is a guest of the show. And so the trick people got on the limo ride back to the hotel, and we're all happy except for the guy that wasn't picked. And we're excited because everyone's trick was successful, and we were high on excitement. So now I'm back at the hotel. Now, I'm not going to go to sleep. I got to stay up and watch the show. So I get back to the hotel like 8 o'clock, and the show's going to be on 11:30. So now I got 3.5 hours to blow. So I grab something to eat, and I wait. And the show comes on. I watch the show. I see myself on TV. And now I still can't sleep because I'm wired, even though I hadn't gotten any sleep the night before. So now I'm going on yet another night's of sleep. And it took me like 2 or 3 hours to kind of wind down enough to go to sleep. I slept until I woke up the next day. And then the next day, things began. So I managed to find my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law's brother was living in Manhattan at the time. No, it wasn't his brother. Whatever. My brother-in-law had a friend lived in Manhattan. They let me crash at his place. So I had to check out of the hotel, and I was going to do my sightseeing for the day. So what I ended up going to was, I went to this building here. This is the One Worldwide Plaza. This is the building that was built in the Skyscraper documentary. And Ogilvy and Maythorpe, not Maythorpe. Ogilvy and Thorpe. It was an ad agency, had a majority of this building at the time. And you walk into the lobby, and you're gonna basically go into the lobby of this ad agency, and there was no going in the building past the front desk. So I went to that building, and then I took the train over, and I went to the Empire State Building, and I went up in the top of the Empire State Building, the observation deck, and that was great. And I took the subway down to Financial District, and I went up to the observation deck at the World Trade Center, and that was fascinating for me. Growing up in a town that had the highest building was 2 stories. World Trade Center at the time had 110 stories, and it was up there. The view was spectacular, and the observation deck goes all the way around the top floor. And the windows were constructed such that you could kind of look out and look straight down the pillars, the outside pillars of the World Trade Center, all the way down to the sidewalk. And then I hoofed it over, and I went on the Ellis Island Ferry. I don't think I got... No, I must have. I got off, and I walked around the base of the Statue of Liberty there, and then I rode back to Manhattan. And I found... Oops, I'll go into that. Oh, come on. All right, so I basically that day I'm walking, or I'm on the subway all day, and I ate the street hot dogs from the street vendors, just because it was something to do while I was in Manhattan. Okay, afterwards. All right, so now I wake up the next day at where I was staying, and I crashed the guy's apartment. I call the limo company. They come and get me. They take me back to LaGuardia. I fly back to Atlanta. and I take the train back and I walk home. All right, so I walk home to my house. Now, I am on a campus in 1990. Now, Letterman's been on the air for 8 years. He was the most popular show for college kids, except for 120 Minutes, which was on Sunday nights at 10 o'clock or something on MTV. So I'm on the most popular show. I'm on a college campus. And nobody recognized me. No one came up to me and said, hey, I saw you on Letterman. Nothing. It's like, now, granted, Georgia Tech is a tech university, but still, I mean, you're in college. All right, nothing. Okay, well, I did the show, but I didn't get any recognition for it. But I didn't do that for that. I did it to see the buildings. All right, so 6 months later, that was in June when I did it. 6 months later, right around Christmas, I'm in a comedy club in underground Atlanta, and I'm walking into the bathroom, and there's a guy standing there in one urinal, and I go up to the next one, and I'm doing my business. He looks over at me and he goes, he's like kind of checking me out, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. He kind of keeps checking me out, and I'm like, what? And he says, I see you in here. I see you in here every night. And I kind of ignore him. He says, no, I'm telling you right now, I see you in here every night. And I look over, and I'm like, not me, man. I've never been in here. He washes his hands. I finish up. I start washing my hands. He's about to walk out, and he goes, I see you in here every night. I know it's you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I see your stupid human trick on the monitors every night. They play it on the monitors here in the comedy club every night. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. He opens the door and he yells out over to the bartender. He's like, I told you, this is the guy. This is the guy that's on the video every night. And so I walk out, and the people at the bar, they're like waving their hands, and I get a free drink, and everything's great. So at least I got recognized somewhere. And then I'm at my 10-year high school reunion in 1991. So it's a year after I was on Letterman. And one guy, Brian, he said, hey, Craig, I saw your thing on Letterman. I saw your trick on Letterman. I go, really? He goes, yeah, he was out, what do they call it when they jump out of the airplanes for firefighters, flame jumping? I don't know. He said, I was flame jumping in Idaho, and I'd been out almost all day long. I was really tired. I come back to the hotel with a pizza, and I'm drinking a beer, and I'm eating my pizza, and Letterman comes on, and he got really excited because he saw me. And then one other guy, a friend of mine, brother of a friend of mine, I talked to him at some point, and he goes, yeah, I saw your trick too. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. I was really excited because I actually knew someone that was on the air. I was really excited. And I looked around, and I'm all by myself. This guy's name is Mark. And Mark says, I was all by myself, and then I got pissed. I got pissed that I didn't get to tell anybody that I actually knew the guy on television. So I kind of laughed at that. Okay, so where are we now? Oh, we're almost at 50 minutes. You're asking yourself, all right, this is Tech Talk with Grandpa. Where's the tech in this whole thing? It's just a crazy story. I will have to admit that there's a stretch here, but there is a tech tie to this whole thing. So, let me see, when was this? Probably in 1998. Somebody, an editor from a book publishing company called New Writers, contacts me, and she says, hey, we see from your resume that you have Linux experience. And this is before I wrote my book. This was back when I was doing consulting. Because I see you have Linux experience on your resume, and we have a book that's currently being written, and we would like you to be a technical editor for it. And I said, okay. And that book was called Linux Firewalls. This came out in probably 1999, maybe. And so I got hired and get these chapters, and I'd review them for technical details and edits in the back. And Katie, and when I met her a little bit later, she said, "Yeah, I saw your video." And I said, "Well, was it when it was on TV?" And he goes, "No, you have it posted. I'm not going to tell you where it was posted, but it's been posted for a really long time because I digitized it. Back in college, like in 1990, 1991, I had a videotape that I had set my VCR up to record. And I had a videotape and a capture card to, capture channel 3 or whatever. And the resolution of that original video for the longest time was 128 by 112. It's like a postage stamp these days on a monitor these days. But she saw it and she said, "We have to have this guy. This guy is going to be our reviewer for Linux firewalls." So I did that. And later, she's the same editor that came to me and said, "Why don't you write a book? You are a very vocal editor. In fact, you should write a book." And so I came up, that's when, I haven't talked about this yet, but the .com crash occurred. I didn't have a job, so I wrote in my first book, Embedded Linux. And Katie was my acquisition editor, and she helped me get through that. All right, so the conclusion to all this thing. My takeaway from this was I got a gift certificate from the NBC store for about $20. I went down and I bought a Late Night with David Letterman t-shirt, and I took the rest of the money, which was $525, and I bought this thing here. I bought a Maytag washing machine. I spent about $500 on this thing. We had it there at the house, and we didn't have to go to the laundromat the rest of the time I was in graduate school. Now, what's happened since then is I learned to not tell people that I've been on Letterman. In the early days, that would come out, and people got to know me as the guy, that stupid human trick guy, and I didn't really like that. I wanted people to get to know me without having this thing affect their opinion of me. Now, they eventually found out through one way or another, but I stopped telling people that I'd been on Letterman. And I don't watch the video. Now, this is important for you if you actually get to be on television. I watched the video when it was on live that evening after I got back from the studio. And I watched my videotape probably about 10 or 20 times after that. And I found that I was remembering more what you guys saw from the video than what my experience is. My experience is I was the one who walked out. My perspective's completely different. I walked out, I looked Dave right in the face. So I stopped watching the video long ago. Now I'll listen to it, but whenever it's on, I will close my eyes and remember my experience, not what you guys saw. And people have always wanted me to do the trick again. Now, I did the trick 3 times in my life. I did it that first time at the New Mexico State Stupid Humor Tricks competition. I did it during rehearsal, and I did it on the show. I'm not going to do the trick again. In fact, last night I said, "All right, I'll just see if I can twirl this pill." Now I did this. I tried to do this last night, and I failed horribly. So you get it. All right. Well, you see where we're going with that. All right. So I'm way out of practice. I haven't done it for like 30 years, except for I did it a couple times last night. And anyway, so I showed my granddaughter, whose birthday is today. Everyone wished my granddaughter happy birthday. She is 13 years old today. And I kind of was telling her about this thing, and I showed it to her. And she didn't get it. She's like, "So what? You're on TV." And it came to me that the last late night show, or the late show that was on CBS was in 2015. So if you were born after 2000, you were not really a Letterman fan. He was on TV. So people born in this century, they don't get it. They don't understand. They don't understand that back then there was only 4 channels. ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS, and maybe some independents if you lived in a large city. They didn't understand how, like, giant being on Letterman actually was. They won't get it. The only people that get it are the ones that were born, in the 70s or 80s. So here's the real takeaway from me about presentations. When I did my PhD presentation, I had all these things coordinated and it had to go off as planned. But I knew that if something had failed, the video had failed, or the audio had failed, or my computer had failed, I kind of had an alternate plan to kind of recover from problems with presentations. But the very first time I was on the big stage, there's no plan B. When you go on Letterman in front of millions of people, you either do it or you don't. There's no plan B when you go and do this thing. Now, fortunately, when you get presentations, you get the opportunity to do a lot of prep, and you can plan for problems along the way and be able to recover from them and learn how to wing it. So here's my advice to you. I've given presentations all my life to investors, to pitching ideas to people, listening to people's presentations, whatever, getting new jobs. They're all presentations. And my advice right now is you should do something that is way out of your comfort zone. Now, particularly if you're young. If you're old, this is probably even harder to do. But if you're young, do something that's so uncomfortable, you have a really big opportunity to fail. And if you fail, that's fine. You're going to learn how to recover from that. If you don't, you're successful and you come away with a sense of accomplishment. Now, for me, no presentation that I've ever given since I was on Letterman is ever at that pressure point level. In fact, I go in and I say, okay, I give this presentation, and if there's a problem, I'll just wing it. All right, almost all these tech talks are this way. I can get out of it because two things. People are actually forgiving. Maybe not in this online world where you have the opportunity for people to comment and give their crappy comments to you. But most of the time, people are forgiving. They realize that you're up on stage and you're doing this thing, and you're nervous, and they won't hold that against you. The other thing is, if you do something way out of your comfort zone, and you accomplish that, presentations after that are easy. For me, all presentations are easy. And I'm not actually nervous. I do a lot of prep to make sure I can cover for plan B, but I just go out there and do it because nothing will be like going out and doing a stupid human trick. Everything after that's easy. Okay, well, that's where I'm going to conclude this evening. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time on Tech Talk with Grandpa. Have a good night.